Hello, I'm Matt Reynolds, back with another edition of Take 5. I spent the day yesterday walking the halls of the Craft Brew conference in Minneapolis. This is always an exciting market to cover through the lens of packaging, and as usual, there is a whole lot going on from a trends perspective. One all-new debut that I saw on the floor was Pneumatic Scale Angelus's CB100C. Typically for canning at low to medium speeds and volumes, inline fillers do the job just fine. But this 100 can a minute entry uses a 12-head rotary style filling turret instead of inline, which makes for less product agitation. There, of course, are slower inline machines and rotary filler machines that go faster than any craft brewer would ever need on either side of this machine's continuum. But this one occupies a specific niche, a rotary filler targeting that 100 can a minute market. And that's about the center of the bullseye for craft brew. Almost synonymous with craft brew are the high-end, robust, and often brightly colored HDPE or LDPE can handles or can carriers. Practically every brewer uses them in one format or another as 6-pack can holders or maybe 4-pack holders for 16-ounce cans. The usual suspects of PacTech and Roberts Polypro are at the show, and I noticed that just because they're staples in this corner of the beer industry, that doesn't mean they're not innovating. New formats are lightweighting to use less total plastic. They're also going the opposite direction for more branding opportunity for the beer. And they're also creating newer, more ergonomic designs that are easier for consumers to carry or perhaps more firmly grip the cans themselves. And with new formats come new application equipment, and those range from completely manual to sophisticated fast machinery. Can handles are also evolving in terms of materials. We've seen a lot of movement in the paperboard side of the equation as an outgrowth of consumers' perceptions of plastic. And I saw a lot of examples yesterday from the likes of Graphic Packaging, Westrock, and Atlantic Packaging's Fishbone, among others. They tend to use virgin paperboard rather than recycled, since the longer strands used there are more robust to handle the liquid weight of beer. This paperboard also features mineral or other coatings to mitigate moisture pickup. And like the plastic can handle counterparts, they range from minimalistic to robust with lots of billboard space. And also like the plastic can handle counterparts, a range of application capabilities from manual to fully automated underpin the growth of this area. And with craft brew volumes frequently not high enough to merit minimum order quantities for printed cans, a lot of breweries buy bright stock cans and decorate them themselves. I spoke to the folks at Weber Packaging about some interesting labels with matte and gloss coatings and even some tactile elements. Also, my pal Bob Williams gave me a tip on an upcoming shrink sleeve machine by Axon with what could be controversially called a steamless tunnel, where the shrink sleeve cans are dry to the touch coming out of the tunnel. I saw that tri-pack shrink sleevers had drawn quite a crowd too. In terms of can decoration, we've seen a lot of growth in direct-to-shape digital printing. Machine manufacturers like Velox, Hinterkopf, and ToneJet were all at the show, as were their customers, can decorators like Heartprint and Solucan. A few years ago, this tech might not have been considered ready for prime time, but it seems like the time of the direct-to-shape digital can printing has arrived, or at least is quickly approaching. Craft brew relies on packaged products sold in bottles or increasingly in cans, but also on in-person or on-premise places like tap rooms, brew pubs, or distributed drafts or kegs for restaurants. Naturally, the pandemic was really hard on this subcategory. The good news, according to Bart Watson, the Brewery Association's economist, was there was a strong bounce back of 8% growth in 2021 over 2020, although not quite back to 2019 levels. Beyond the more immediate and acutely felt disruptions around supply chains and logistics, Watson described the craft brew landscape as a maturing market, both in its breweries and in its consumers. It's still growing, but the pace of change is slowing. Now, traditionally, beverage alcohol is a three-legged stool of beer, wine, and spirits. But a fourth category, a challenger segment, has entered the market, and that's of seltzers or RTD ready-to-drink cocktails. These look like beer to many consumers since they tend to be in cans. They're about the same alcohol by volume, and the price point is similar. Because they look like beer, they're eating into the craft beer's market share. They're new and exciting, so more people from younger generations like millennials and Gen Z have started to include these in their beverage mix. This brings up an existential question for craft breweries. They often have at least some of the equipment and a lot of the expertise needed to expand into this fourth category of seltzers and RTDs themselves. Or they could double down and continue to innovate in the segment that they've already mastered, craft beer. Watson referenced the growth of IPAs from the bitterness and IBU wars of the previous decade and its evolution into the hazy, juicy, fruity IPAs of today. Now, both are viable paths, and they're not mutually exclusive. So he asked this question to his audience of brewers at the conference. With all of these changes, what does craft brew want to be? That's all the time we have for Take 5.